Hi, I'm a little bit early, about 3 minutes early, so I'm just making sure that everything is. Um, Hi, I'm a few minutes early, but I thought I would check just to make sure that all of my tech is working properly. I'm still pretty new to this anyway. We can get started in about 2 minutes. I've got some notes. I've got my article ready to go. And so any of you that are early, welcome. This is a new idea that I had to start. I've written over 200 articles, and I really thought it was a good idea to start reading them in person. I thought, okay, this would be interesting to see what happens, and I'm hoping that people will eventually get on and start commenting and asking questions so that it can be very interactive. We've still got 2 minutes. Get my lemonade. No, not very sweet. So I'm just gonna keep checking everything. I've got the comments section going, and the article is ready, and my notes. So here we go. Let me see. Couple minutes. Well, here we are in Costa Rica. It looks like the rainy season is starting, which is great. We've had a lot of wind, which is unusual in our dry season. So the rain coming, all the plants are just singing all around me. My garden is happy as heck. So let's get going with this. I got 1 minute. The cicadas are still looking for girlfriends frantically. They only have a few days to live, I believe, after they hatch. And otherwise, it's pretty tranquil, great place to live. I'm just really happy to be here in Costa Rica. So, well, I think what I'm going to do is get started with this live Facebook. Okay, let me get my notes. Okay, this is Reading Dementia. It's where I read my my articles that I've written and posted over the past few years. Actually, I've written over 200 articles on dementia, specifically memory loss, healthy aging. I also have a book called Journey Through the Infinite Mind, The Science and Spirituality of Dementia, available on Amazon. It's also in Spanish. I've also got a version in Spanish. I'm a dementia educator, and I've had 25 years experience helping families and people who are experiencing dementia. And here in Costa Rica, where I live, I do in-person talks and once a month online talk with a hospice group here in the country. Now, if you're joining us just now, please, if you'd like to have me answer questions at the end of the reading, please put your question in the comments section. And this reading today is about the risks of what are the risks of cognitive decline, and what are cognitive decline and dementia. It's amazing how many risk factors there are, especially even in early life. There's indicators that you possibly could be at risk. So I've been doing some research, and there's so much I learned about this. This Facebook Live I want to keep it Facebook Live because I'd like people to interact. I'd like people to start asking questions that I can respond to immediately at the end of the reading. However, when at the end of the session, I will put it on YouTube, and I will post it several times throughout this coming week, so that the recording, you can still, if you've missed this, you can still get the recording on YouTube. And also the other 2 sessions that I've had are on YouTube. So there's a YouTube channel that's Reading Dementia, Katia de Luisa, that you can go to and get this reading. All right, so what I'd like to do is start with a story. A couple years ago, I lost one of my children, one of my sons, he's an adult, but it was a hit and run accident, and he died. As a result, I was extremely depressed. I was a functional depressive. I was very low energy, very little, and I was not animated. I was not inspired to do anything. I just kind of managed my life felt like I was on hold. And what happened was I started to notice cognitive decline. And it scared me a lot because I'm totally aware of cognitive decline, what are the symptoms, and where it would go if it was dementia. So as a result, I was pretty scared. And like I recommend to everybody else, when you have some concerns about your cognitive abilities, and there's some concerns and you've noticed some changes, it's best just to get tested. Get tested. And I got tested, and I had a CAT scan, and luckily everything up there showed pretty well. But when I started researching the risks of dementia, I realized that my lifestyle was pretty bad. The doctor told me that the cognitive decline I was experiencing was because of the chronic depression that I'd had for a year over losing my son. Depression is one of the major causes of dementia. However, my lifestyle, when I started really researching what the risks are, and I realized that I had to change everything. So I immediately started changing diet, exercise, thought patterns, made sure I got good sleep, and within a month, I was back to normal. So it's very, very important to know what your risk factors are and how to prevent dementia or cognitive decline, which is the beginnings, is often the beginning of dementia. It's not always. So anyway, what we'll do is we're going to get into this story right now, the article that I've written. Okay, most people, and oh, by the way, I'm going to, at certain points that I think I need to explain a little bit further, I will stop in the reading and do the explanation and then go back to the reading. So this article is a little bit long because there were an awful lot of risk factors that I'd never imagined. And even with this article and the research I've done, I'm sure there's even more if I delve deeper. But these are basics, I believe, that people should know about. All right, so let's begin. Most people fear dementia, and many prefer not to talk about it, especially if they are older adults having memory problems. However, cognitive decline and dementia is on the rise, not only among seniors, but also younger people. It's important to know what your risk factors are and what you can do to prevent it beginning at an early age. Cognitive decline, dementia, and its prevention are the subject of many scientific studies, and anyone can access the information through the internet. I'm amazed at how many elements of risk exist even in our youth. There's a lot of early indicators in our youth that are risk indicators that researchers are finding. Okay, cognitive decline, dementia, and its prevention, For instance, those with chronic nightmares several times a week are a dementia risk later in life. There's people that have chronic nightmares that wake them up several times a week. It's not when you just occasionally have a nightmare, all right? I'm assuming it's the sleep interruption as well as the fear factor, which creates a sudden flood of adrenaline and cortisol, which usually continues even after awakening, that are the contributing factors. Brain function is adversely affected by this. Okay? Sleep is really important. If you are a person who has trouble staying asleep or getting to sleep, and it's a continuous issue that you are dealing with, you are at risk. That's one of the risk factors, is not adequate sleep. All right. Another early risk factor is low education, which in some individuals leaves a smaller cognitive reserve, which can limit the brain's ability to compensate for damage or decline. Doesn't mean that you don't have intelligence if you have a low education. It's just that you have less information, which is your cognitive reserve, which can help you if you start to have cognitive decline. So this was an interesting study. In 1987, there was an Alzheimer's research called the Nuns Study, involving an order of 678 Catholic nuns. The researchers were allowed to study their cognitive function and lifestyles while alive, their medical records, and later conducted post-mortem brain autopsies. This is an ongoing study even today. All right, so here's the results of that study. The study also included the nuns' written autobiographies, which they usually did early when they first went into the convent. And in those days, girls would go into the convent in their late teens. So they were pretty young, and they were required to write essays and autobiographies because most of them were being trained to be teachers. So this was a lucky stroke for the researchers, because they were able to see how they were doing mentally, what their level of understanding was through their writings. Anyway, here's the results of that. The study also included the nuns' written autobiographies and found that low linguistic abilities early in life, especially the degree of ideas and grammatical complexity, were strong indicators of which ones developed Alzheimer's later in life. So when they had very simple writings with not too many ideas in there, or grammatically it was, their linguistic abilities were not very high, those nuns had a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's later on, because they had done autopsies and they also knew the nuns' lifestyle. Also, the research concluded that vascular health is essential in prevention of cognitive decline. Blood flow problems to the brain can create small, often imperceivable strokes, TIAs, which are a major cause of dementia development. This is vascular dementia. The part of the study I found particularly interesting was autopsies showed several nuns had Alzheimer damage throughout their brain, but while alive demonstrated no cognitive decline. They demonstrated no symptoms of Alzheimer's, even though their brain was riddled with Alzheimer's. They don't know why. This still fascinates me. It means it's possible to have full-blown Alzheimer's and not show symptoms. Would you get tested if you had no cognitive decline? So how many people do have Alzheimer's and yet they show no symptoms? There could be thousands. We just don't know. This is a study that I think should definitely be continued as far as that particular aspect of the nun study. Okay, our adult lifestyle can be a major dementia risk. This is important. If you have hypertension, alcohol, smoking, and drug abuse are all dementia risks. Lack of exercise. Got to keep moving that body in order for the brain to be healthy. Unhealthy diet. This is pretty much prevalent across the board with most people. Diet is essential. Lack of mental stimulation. Routine is a killer in older adults because we fall into a routine and we don't change them. And as a result, there's not a whole lot of mental stimulation. We watch the same programs, we do the same things, we're comfortable there, and unfortunately that's a high risk for dementia. Certain medical conditions also run a high risk of dementia. Heart disease, blood pressure, circulatory and vascular problems, obesity, diabetes, history of head trauma. If you've had in the past head trauma, such as football players have a very high incidence of developing late Alzheimer's in later life. Genetics, your genetics, if you have a history of dementia in your family. Not all dementias, though, are genetic, so that's something that has to be discussed a little bit later down the road here. Mental illness. Depression, obviously, I was in a high-risk category with the depression that I was suffering. Chronic anxiety, stress is another one that if you have a chronic condition with stress, please attend to it because it can create brain malfunctions. PTSD and OCD. I didn't find a whole lot of information on that, but I personally feel that it's logical that both of those mental conditions would cause a high risk for dementia. Neuroticism, which has in the past been referred to as neuroses, right? Neurotic people. And that refers to those who continually experience negative emotions and unstable emotional states. This commonly leads to other mental disorders such as paranoia, depression, or anxiety, which are dementia risks. The persistent pessimist who continually perceives the negative in life often experiences neurosis. It's always best to practice at least sometimes seeing the glass half full. Okay? All right, let's see here. However, the biggest risk is aging. Welcome to my world. And the older we get, the higher the risk. For those between 65 to 69 years old, about 2 per 100 seniors have developing dementia. And the risk then doubles every 5 years. So if you're 65 and you don't have dementia by 70, the risk is double. The importance of incorporating a healthy lifestyle in our later years is essential. Ask me about it. I'm learning that the hard way. All right. Hearing loss is common among aging adults and can increase cognitive decline and lead to dementia. Excuse me the stuttering. Once upon returning from a trip, I fell asleep on a plane and I didn't pop my ears. And when I woke up, I was totally deaf. The ear pressure had increased so I could not hear a sound. I was in a silent bubble watching everyone move their mouths with nothing coming out. I walked through the bustling but soundless airport in a panic, wondering if this was permanent. By the time I got my luggage, my hearing was slowly returning, thank God. I remembered thinking, I now understand what it's like to be deaf. I also understood why it is a dementia risk. It's terrifyingly isolating. It was just like being in this bubble, and I couldn't reach out to anybody because, of course, I didn't know sign language. How did I tell people that I couldn't hear anything? And I was hoping that it was going to go away, and it did. But deafness and losing hearing and that communication with your outer world and with people, there's a very high dementia risk. So if you have hearing problems and you use hearing aids, please use them. All right? Okay, lack of sensory stimulation can be a risk as well as lack of mental stimulation. So by not exercising those senses, touch and smell and taste, try some new foods. New is the key to preventing dementia. Try new constantly. We need to get involved in new activities, meet new people, and try something we've never done before, especially as we age, when the tendency to fall into set routines seldom vary. Lack of social support during aging showed 54% risk of developing dementia. 54%, that's quite a bit, that risk. Isolation from others is a major factor, especially as we're aging. When we're younger, we sort of automatically have so many things going in our life, but when we're aging, everything slows down. When we interact with others, not only do we support a healthy emotional system, we also exercise our brain with our human connections. Our conversations activate cognitive function, especially if we are talking with a person we just met. And the physical connections in groups creates this overall sense of well-being. I go to lunch several times a month with different groups of people. Sometimes it's restaurants, other times potlucks at people's homes, or celebrations like a birthday party. I'm very content to stay at home without socializing, but I know how important this is during my aging, so I make sure not to miss an event. Later, I'm always glad I did attend, even if it meant driving more than I like. I really do. I am very serious about keeping my risk of dementia and cognitive decline at a minimal. Medications can be a high risk and cause dementia, whether it's adverse reactions and side effects or over-medicating. The latter is a common issue with the elder patient who often has several medical conditions. There was a time when I was a in-home caregiver contracted by families, and there were elderly people that I had to administer. One lady had 25 different medications that she had to take, most of them twice a day. And they wondered why she had dementia. Over-medicating is a major cause of dementia, and there have been documented cases of people being taken off of all their medications, and suddenly they were cognitive again. So many times it's not an actual cognitive condition, it's over-medicating. So please be aware of that, everybody who takes more than one medication. Or even if you take one medication, be sure to check for side effects and see if there's anything about cognitive decline. Another risk is air pollution. This is pretty bad, especially when you live in these places, because where can you go? If you live in a city like Los Angeles, Mexico City, or a town where air pollution is high, you are breathing toxins every day. Many of these are neurotoxins, such as lead, mercury, aluminum, or arsenic, which cause mild cognitive impairment to severe neurological damage. Also, natural toxins are a danger, like molds. I had a house that had mold, and I remember I did not have a very good memory while I lived in that house. And some bacteria and man-made ones, like pesticides or industrial chemicals. Every day we are being bombarded by toxins that affect physical and cognitive health. The chemicals in our water, food, and air. All right. Ethnicity, oh God, sometimes I have a terrible time pronouncing words, especially because I speak two languages, can be a factor. African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans are a higher risk group. Okay. I believe this correlates a lot to their traditional diets, which in many cases creates the risk. When a certain diet is traditional, it is passed down throughout the generations, causing a genetic tendency to other medical conditions, which can lead to dementia. Indigenous groups have a high incidence of alcohol abuse, and Navajo have an above average obesity rate and one of the highest childhood diabetes rates. The childhood diabetes among Navajos is incredibly high, and Navajo are traditionally, you'll see them as they're pretty heavy set people, and they do have a diet. They love that fry bread. The fry bread is nothing but fried flour and water, and like tortillas in the Hispanic, which is much healthier, they eat it with every meal. I used to live in the Southwest, so I was witness to this. Okay, where are we? I lose my space here. Hispanics have a high carbohydrate diet, also leading to obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. African Americans are fond of pork and greasy food, which creates high blood pressure and heart disease. So there's certain foods in a traditional diet that are not necessarily healthy and can be high risks for dementia. So I personally believe a lot of these three risk groups has a lot to do with their diets. And speaking of diet is a major contributor to dementia risk. Processed foods filled with chemicals, which many are petroleum products, create a myriad of health problems. Excess sugar and salt leads to diabetes and heart disease. Fresh vegetables and fruits are essential for brain health, especially adding fish to your diet. Extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil, both of those oils, have massive brain-boosting nutrients and antioxidants. Those are the only two oils that I use. I don't use corn oil or any of the other oils. And these oils have been shown to reverse some of the cognitive deficits in aging. So they've actually researched these oils and found that they can help to reduce a lot of cognitive decline. Especially coconut oil. Adding a tablespoon of coconut oil to your smoothie or whatever in the mornings is very, very good for the brain. Okay, let's try and see if I can keep my place here. All right, exercise is equally important as diet. Too often we find making an exercise routine to be too difficult in our busy life. After work, we want to relax. Or if we are older, sometimes our physical condition, oh my goodness, all this talking. Okay. If we are older, sometimes our physical condition makes exercising too difficult. Most of us spend hours each day sitting at our computers. Oh, welcome to my world. All of which becomes a risk. The body needs to move, blood and nutrients, and the heart needs to be pushed to pump. Doing any kind of an exercise where you get that heart pumping, even just a little bit. It's not like you have to sweat yourself to death, but get that heart pumping. Our brain receives 15% of the heart's blood output and needs the oxygen and nutrients while removing waste products. We need the heart to pump the blood to remove the waste that's in our body. The waste in our bodies are a high dementia risk. Disruption to this process can lead to brain damage. Waste products become toxic, and again, this leads to dementia risk. All right, and let's see. To sum up this information, keeping a healthy lifestyle is actually the most important aspect of keeping a healthy brain. For many of us, this takes a lot of work and means change. Most of us are not comfortable with change, especially if we're older. But if you want to prevent cognitive decline or dementia, you will need to step out of your comfort zone and do whatever is necessary. Okay, well, that's my article on dementia risks. And like I say, if I were researching further, which I will do at some point, I will find other dementia risks that we commonly have in our life. So, let me see. Oh, you can go to my website, and on the blog section, you will find other articles that I have written. The website is www.dementialearninginstitute.com. And next week, we're going to be doing these readings every week. I have lots of articles and lots of individual subjects that we'll touch on. Eventually, we'll start working on certain individual dementia symptoms, behaviors. I want you to step into the world of a person with dementia to help you develop empathy. So a lot of the articles that I'll be reading have to do with all of these individual aspects of dementia. Sometimes it'll be something, some research that I found, which I'm constantly looking for research on different things. I will not be discussing medications. I'm not qualified to do that. I have opinions, but I'm still not qualified to do that. Next week, we'll talk more about, today was the risks. Next week, we'll talk more about what you can do to prevent it. There's an awful lot that you can do to prevent cognitive decline, especially if you're older, and prevent dementia, or slow the symptoms if you do have it. So it's not, you can always have a quality of life regardless of what mental or physical condition you have. And it's about understanding that deep in your soul and looking for what you need to do to create that quality of life for yourself. So thank you for tuning in. Like I say, this is going to be turned into a YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And if you would like to go to my YouTube channel and you like these readings, please subscribe. It's a brand new channel, so I don't have too many people yet, but I really appreciate it. If you like what I'm doing, that you will subscribe. So until next Sunday at 9 o'clock, where we'll be discussing, like I said, we'll be discussing the different ways to prevent cognitive decline. I'll see you then.